The request came out as nothing more than a ragged whisper, a plea swallowed by the cold daylight pouring through the shattered windows of the abandoned naval hangar. It didn't sound like the voice of an admiral or a war hero or a man whose name once made entire fleets stand straighter. It sounded like the breaking point of a human soul, and that was exactly why Rowan Hale, the quiet, overlooked janitor, froze mid-step, gripping his mop handle as if it might hold him upright while the world tilted. The Admiral Callum Rhydderch was slumped against a crate, his once commanding frame trembling, his uniform smeared with dried blood and engine soot. But what stopped Rowan was the look in his eyes, hollow, lost, exhausted beyond measure. A man asking the universe for mercy. If you believe every person deserves kindness, forgiveness, and a second chance, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Light. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Rowan's pulse hammered as he set the mop aside and took off his janitor's jacket, the one with fading patches he sewed on himself after it ripped at the elbow. The air smelled of rust, spilled fuel, and the sting of old memories. He had cleaned these floors for 7 years, sweeping up after men whose medals outweighed his entire life, men who walked past him like he wasn't there. But Rowan never expected to find one of their legends collapsing alone, whispering to a stranger to make it fast. As if he were ready to give up entirely, Rowan approached cautiously, stepping over bits of twisted metal left behind from some forgotten exercise. He didn't know much about military life, but he knew what despair looked like. He had seen it in the mirror too many times since the night his wife died, leaving him to raise their daughter Mara alone. He recognized the slump in the shoulders, the quiet surrender, the way someone's voice thinned when they no longer had strength to hold their world together. Callum Rhydderch had been a name Rowan only knew through whispered gossip among the dock crew, the youngest admiral in the Pacific Fleet's history, a decorated SEAL whose rescue missions were taught in academies, a man who led thousands, but now he was just a father whose son, Leo, had been missing for 72 hours after a boating accident off the coast. The official search had ended that morning, shifting quietly from rescue to recovery, the coldest word Rowan had ever heard. Reports said the waves were too violent for survival. The ocean had swallowed enough already. Rowan had overheard the dockers talking. The admiral refused to stop looking, refused to sign the final papers, refused to break. Until now, Rowan didn't ask what "make it fast" meant. He didn't need to. Grief could make anyone think of endings. But Rowan also knew that when someone handed you their last thread of hope, you held it with both hands. He knelt beside Callum and draped his jacket over the man's shaking shoulders. Sunlight warmed the dusty floor around them, dust particles floating like tiny, suspended memories. Rowan told him gently but firmly that quitting was not an option today, not while breath still came and the tide had not returned every truth it held. The admiral's chest shuddered, as if every word Rowan spoke carved cracks into the dam he built inside himself. There was no dramatic moment, no cinematic collapse, only the quiet, devastating sound of a man exhaling the weight he'd carried alone. Rowan helped him sit straighter, handed him a bottle of water, and did what no one else had done these last 3 days. He stayed, not as a janitor, not as a stranger, but as a father who understood the terror of losing the one thing that made life worth fighting for. As hours passed, Rowan listened while Callum spoke haltingly about Leo, an adventurous 16-year-old with hair the color of wet sand and a stubborn streak inherited from his father. They talked sitting on crates, in the dusty sunlight, as the world moved quietly outside. Rowan shared stories, too, about Mara's love for sketching, how she'd leave little pencil drawings in his lunchbox so he wouldn't be lonely at work. He shared how he used to work construction, how life had broken in ways he never expected, but how Mara kept his heart from sinking. The two men had lived oceans apart in status and world, yet grief had a way of leveling every hierarchy. By late afternoon, something shifted. A spark relit in the Admiral's tired gaze when Rowan said, "If your boy is out there, he needs you fighting for him, not surrendering." Callum didn't respond at first, but his hands slowly steadied, gripping the water bottle with newfound resolve. He wiped his face on Rowan's jacket sleeve like a man waking from a fever dream. Then, almost mechanically, he stood. Stumbling, yes, but standing. Rowan helped him to the docks, both of them blinking against the brightness of day. The search boats were moored silently, ropes creaking in the breeze. Workers had already gone home. Everyone had moved on, except the father who refused to. Callum stared at the horizon with a tightened jaw, and Rowan recognized the flicker of determination beginning to replace despair. Rowan didn't have a boat. He didn't have training, but he had strength, heart, and two rough hands accustomed to long days and few breaks. So he told Callum he would go with him. No questions, no conditions. Callum didn't protest. He simply nodded once, silently grateful. They took one of the smaller vessels, a maintenance craft Rowan used for shoreline cleanup. Its engine sputtered, old and stubborn, but it roared to life on the third try. The sea was calmer than it had been in days, sunlight glinting across the waves like 1,000 broken mirrors. They rowed out past the markers, past the rocky shoals where the search teams had concentrated, into the quieter stretches where the ocean rarely gave back what it swallowed. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was steady, shared, purposeful. Rowan felt it in his bones. This was where he needed to be. Hours of searching passed. They scanned the waters, circled coves, shouted Leo's name into the wind. Callum never stopped calling, never stopped looking, never stopped fighting, even when exhaustion threatened to drag him back into darkness. Rowan kept the boat steady, steering with battered hands, refusing to let the Admiral crumble again. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching longer across the waves. Just when the edge of doubt brushed Rowan's mind, a flicker of orange caught his eye near the mouth of a narrow inlet. A life vest. Rowan shouted, and Callum lurched to the bow, eyes wide, breath trapped in his throat. They brought the vessel closer. The orange bobbed, caught on a piece of driftwood, then a pale hand, then a face. Leo Rhydderch was there, weak, sunburned, barely conscious, but alive, alive. The ocean had not claimed him after all. Callum made a sound Rowan would never forget, a sound torn between terror and relief. They pulled the boy aboard. Leo's cracked lips moved, trying to form words, but Callum gripped his son's cheeks gently, forehead pressed to his, tears mingling with seawater. Rowan turned away just enough to give them that moment, though his own eyes blurred. They sped back to shore with desperate urgency, but with something else too, hope, fierce and bright. Doctors later said Leo had survived by finding shelter in a small cave after being thrown from the boat, living off rainwater and sheer willpower until he spotted the life vest drifting in the currents and clung to it. Callum stayed at his son's side through every step of recovery. Rowan visited often, usually bringing sketches from Mara to cheer the recovering teen. The Admiral became less of a myth and more of a man, a grateful, protective, profoundly changed father who never forgot the janitor who saved him from surrender. Weeks later, Callum requested that Rowan be transferred into a role maintaining safety equipment on the docks. Better pay, regular hours, fewer broken mops and forgotten names. Rowan accepted with disbelief and gratitude, but insisted that the Admiral stop treating him like a charity case. Callum laughed, a deep, warm laugh that surprised even himself, and told Rowan that respect, once earned, ran both ways. Their lives unfolded with renewed purpose. Mara gained a mentor in Leo, who admired her creative mind. Rowan gained a friend in Callum, one who saw his worth clearly and openly, and Callum gained a brother in the man who pulled him back from the edge. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Light. It helps more people find stories filled with humanity, hope, and healing. Before we end, I have a special request. Please comment one word that represents second chances to you. In the end, what happened in that quiet, sun-lit hangar wasn't the fall of a hero. It was the rise of two fathers who learned that strength isn't measured by rank or uniform, but by who stands beside you when your world threatens to collapse. Rowan Hale never expected to change a life. Callum Rhydderch never expected to be saved by a janitor, but life is generous to those who refuse to let go. And on that bright, determined day, two men discovered that sometimes the most extraordinary rescues begin with a single, trembling whisper, and the kindness of someone who chooses to stay.